Welcome, I'm Martina, your trusty guide through the pages of Camp Half-Blood and beyond. Grab your camp shirts, ready your weapons, and let's embark on this epic adventure together. This is Delphi Dispatches. Before we start, just a reminder that you still can send in questions for the Q&A episode after we're done with analyzing the first season of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. You can do so via Instagram, comments or DMs. You can send in an email at delphidispatches@gmail.com, or you can use the Q&A poll under Spotify or the comments on YouTube. Now let's hear some Delphi Dispatches news. On the 20th and 21st of January, our trio was sighted at Disneyland in California. There have been many pictures and videos from fans that met them online, and reportedly they filmed something, so what could that be? On the 18th of January, we got the cover reveal of Wrath of the Triple Goddess. In last episode, I predicted some things, and let's just say I was pretty good. The book will come out on September 24th, 2024, and in a blog post, Rick revealed both the UK and the US cover and wrote a little summary, and I'm just gonna read you the summary. Percy Jackson has saved the world multiple times, battling monsters, titans, and even death himself. So graduating high school should be a piece of cake, right? Wrong. Percy needs 3 college recommendation letters from the gods before his final school year ends. And one thing Percy knows, the Greek gods don't do anything for free. He earned his first one by retrieving Ganymede's lost chalice. Now, to secure his second letter, Percy and his friends Annabeth and Grover must agree to a new challenge. Pet sitting for the goddess Hekate, while she's away over Halloween week. They just need to follow her simple rules. Look after her pet polecat and mastiff like their lives depended on it, because they do. Don't touch anything, especially Hecate's magic potions. But when Grover's curiosity gets the better of him, the friends find themselves with a giant goat, a destroyed mansion, and Hecate's terrifyingly and potentially deadly pets on the loose in New York City. Now the trio have only days to find the pets and restore the mansion to order, or face the full fury of Hekate and her horrifying 3 heads. It's going to take luck, demigod wills, and some old and new friends to hunt down the animals and set things straight again. So this summary reveals quite some things, but I'm gonna hold off on some predictions for after we finish the Percy Jackson series. And maybe I'm gonna dedicate an episode to around the time or before it comes out. Now for the covers, we have the US cover and the UK cover. For the US cover, the artwork was done by Victor Nye. I hope I'm saying the name right, and also the next name for the cover artist of the UK cover. It was done by Khadija Khatib, and those people have done at least the past, the Chalice of the Gods covers for the respective countries each, if not even more covers for Rick's stuff. And just to describe the covers a bit, the US cover is orange-brownish. At the top, we have the typical New York Times bestseller, and then Rick Riordan, and then the title Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and at the bottom, Wrath of the Triple Goddess. And the middle picture itself, what's shown, is a figure, probably Hekate, with 3 heads. It looks like a horse, then a lion, and a dog. This figure wears a Greek-style tunic and is holding torches in both hands, so both symbols of Hekate. And at the center of this figure is the entrance to a house. And behind the figure we have flames. So I like that, but I must say I like the UK cover better because, first of all, it's purple, and purple is my favorite color. And we also have this green fire, and in the fire we see also these heads again, but this time it's not Hekate herself, because Hekate herself is standing in normal god/human-esque form, still holding a torch, but also Percy is holding a torch, because Percy and Annabeth are also on the cover in the front. Their backs turned to us, but they look like action. And yeah, we're here for things that are written on the cover. At the top we have the classic slogan, I would say, from all the Percy Jackson UK covers. Half boy, half god, all hero. Then Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Wrath of the Triple Goddess, and at the bottom it's New York Times bestseller Rick Riordan. I said I like the UK cover better, but I like both of them because they have both their distinct art styles and they both fit their respective, fit together with the respective other books. So now let's move on to some Percy's social media highlights. Most of them are regarding last week's episode as always. For example, we have Rick showing us behind the scenes of the Lotus Casino set and giving some mythological background on the Lotus Eaters. And in this video, really Rick's teacher self showed up. The social media pages of Disney Plus UK shared a video of the trio having tea and answering some questions for Q&A, and I must say it's really fun because the trio loves the foods and tea they serve them, and they're really excited, oh my god, you can eat this every day. I've never had proper tea time, but I probably would react the same because it looks very, very yummy. And then we also got the Demigod Diaries for episode 6. Most of the shots were from the parking garage scene. We saw this whole setup around the taxi with all the gears, lights and cameras. And we have a lot of bits where the tree is just having a blast. We also have a few scenes of the cab arriving at the beach in Santa Monica. And Walker, it was before they start the rain because the scene is obviously in the rain. And Walker is having flashbacks to the last scene he shot in the rain, which was the Minotaur. But Leah is just very excited saying, "This is so exciting!" And Walker is playfully grumpy saying, "No, it's not. Stop trying to make this happy, Leah." I love just the banter between the trio because it shows you that they're having good chemistry off and on camera. So another thing we got, which I think really exciting, even though people like me who don't live in the US can't really benefit except from the pictures we see online, they announced it with a video of Percy Jackson traveling through the United States. And on the way on his pit stops, there will now be one-day photo ops for each stop on different days. And it started on the 24th, the day the last episode dropped, in New York City at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So this photo opportunity was made up of two things. The first thing was a giveaway. I think they got shirts. And the second thing was photo ops. At the base of the Empire State Building, it was this sign saying Percy Jackson was here with a QR code. I scanned it. It shows you a video on YouTube of the scene where Hermes delivers Medusa's head to Olympus. And speaking of Medusa's head, there is also basically the same box you can take pictures with, just where it's to the gods with love Percy Jackson, but it's crossed out and it's written return to sender. I love it. And on top of the Empire State Building, there was this huge photo op saying the 600th floor and Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and it looks really cool. And after it was over, we also got a video on the Percy Jackson and Empire State Building Instagram showing how many people came and how it looked, and it was really cool. Yeah, let's see when and what other photo ops get shown. So I will probably talk about those next episode because they're probably going to be spaced out between now and the last episode. We still don't have a season 2 renewal, but they filmed something at Disneyland, so maybe they filmed a season 2 announcement. And with all these things promoting Percy Jackson around the time, just before the last episode, of course they're getting a second season. If not, I'm going to riot, but we're getting a second season, I know that. For the Rotten Tomatoes score, not much has changed. We still got a 96% average on the tomato meter. We're still certified fresh with 55 fresh and 2 rotten reviews. The average audience score is now at 82% with 4.2 stars and over 2,500 reviews. So everything's still looking good. Now, let's dive into our Demigod discussions about episode 7. We find out the truth. sort of. And it's a longer episode again, yay, so it's 40 minutes long. And yeah, let's just get right into it with Percy walking into Krusty's waterbed palace. But he's alone, and we hear like this shopping music. The captions say it's called La Merced. I have definitely heard that specific like shopping music or like music in general before. And then this man comes out from the back, probably Krusty, and he's like expecting a customer, or already starts selling his waterbeds before he even sees who's there. And when he sees that it's just Percy, he wants to know if Percy's missing his mommy. So does he already know who Percy is, or is he just mocking him in general? But Percy just says, I know who you are. And this reminded me of if you know like musicals, there's currently being a musical made on TikTok called Epic the Musical, based on the Odyssey. And one of the songs ends with, do you know who I am? And this person who's saying that is Poseidon. So I know who you are. Do you know who I am? That just reminded me of that. So back to Percy. He says, I know who you are. You're Procrustes, son of Poseidon, murderer of travelers. But Procrustes just insists on being called Krusty, which I was like, why do you want to be called that name? Krusty sounds like... Ugh. Krusty says to Percy that he has dad's eyes. I'm like, is that the first time we canonically get that Percy has the eyes of Poseidon? Because I can't remember if anyone else said that before. Because I think in the book Sally said that once to him before. He just wants Percy to relax and tries to like persuade him to just sit down in one of the beds. Percy just knows, nope, these beds are a trap. And Krusty is like kind of confused how Percy would know this. And from Percy we get the information that there is a secret passage to the underworld in this building, which reminded me of Secret Tunnel. And Percy tries to talk to Krusty into letting him through, and Krusty just continues to try to sell the beds to Percy, and he talks about fitting that it is not easy for guys like them, saying our parents make it so hard, stretching us and twisting us and hacking off pieces to make us seem more like them. Which is kind of true if you think about it, and the beds take all that away. While he says this, he slaps one of those waterbeds, and it really, classic waterbed, like it ripples or like wiggles. And I think, why would anyone want a waterbed? They're so weird. As he continues to try to get Percy to try one of the beds, Krusty stands right in front of one of the beds, and he gets shoved down onto the bed. And the bed like traps him by wrapping the mattress or whatever waterbeds have around him. And it looks like that some blades appear in the headboard. It's really like weird, so if you move wrong, you could get your head cut off, which apparently is a more PG version of what would actually happen, in that he would lop off whatever hangs off. But we're probably still wondering how he gets shoved down onto the bed. It's none other than our favorite wise girl, Annabeth. She takes off her invisibility cap, and we find out that she's been here the whole time, probably whispering to Percy what he should say, so he seemed to know what he was doing. Krusty just tries to discourage them, and Annabeth says that he should be happy that they let him keep his head. Annabeth calls him dummy, which is weird, since up till this point there were only two people who called others dummy, Clarice and Ares. So, my theory, it's not a Ares thing, because Clarice is Ares' daughter, of course. It's a war thing, because Annabeth is the daughter of Athena, goddess of battle strategy. So yeah, that's my best guess into why she said dummy. After they've secured Procrustes, Grover comes in and asks if they did it. So yay Grover for emotional support. They go into a back room where there's a door with a do not enter sign, and Grover opens it. But as soon as he opens it and smells what comes forth of it, he gets very nervous and starts to scratch his horn, which is apparently a tell that he's nervous. Annabeth sees this and finds a squeaky red ball to give him to reduce his stress, which is really nice of her, seeing when her friend needs some support. Annabeth says a real nice thing. She says, "No one's turning back until we all get back," which is a really all or nothing attitude. And from the other room we hear Krusty say, "No one ever comes back," in a really ominous voice. But Annabeth really gets sassy with him, so Percy's rubbing off on her and says, "Don't make me come out there." I would take Annabeth's threats very seriously. Before they go down, they divide up the pearls. Everyone takes one except Percy, who obviously takes two, one for him, one for his mother. So if they get split up or anything, everyone has an escape route. Then we have our descent into the underworld, and then we get the title card. So this is the first time we don't get the title card right away, but 5 minutes in, 3 minutes in, after the title card, we start with a flashback. And it's the flashback we saw 2 seconds from last episode when Hermes reminded Percy of something. And this flashback, or at least subsequent things, are sprinkled in throughout this episode, so we're gonna jump back and forth between the flashback and our current underworldian adventures. We start out in a car in front of a school where Sally and baby Percy are waiting before they get in. So it's apparently a new school after he got kicked out or Sally withdrew him from the old one. And Sally says we're not in Kansas anymore, and Percy is confused by this Wizard of Oz reference. Sally just says, "Oh, I haven't shown you this movie." So that's one thing on their to-do list, to watch The Wizard of Oz. They're just 1 hour away from the city, and it looks like a whole different planet. Very peaceful. And yeah, Percy does not want to go. But Sally tells him that this is the best school for kids with learning disabilities, and that they're lucky they got in, but Percy still doesn't want to go. And there we see through Sally that parenting is hard sometimes, and sometimes you have to be harsh, and sometimes parents have to make decisions that kids might not understand at that moment. Sally gets out of the car to go around and get Percy, but while she's walking around the car, Percy locks the door from the inside. And as Sally tries to open the door, she urges him to unlock it and says that this is not a negotiation, and it is totally up to him how ugly he's gonna make it before they say goodbye. And she just has to say open the door one time, and he complies because deep down he still loves and respects his mom, even though he's a little kid that's upset. But before we go into the school, we're gonna go back to the underworld. We see Grover closing a trapdoor in the floor, which is making me wonder how long they went through the tunnel, because apparently they had to go down, even deeper down than the underworld itself is, and then up through a trapdoor. So yeah, I actually don't want to think about it too much because it will just hurt my brain. And we see that the underworld, at least from where we're standing, is quite foggy and full of stones and dark, not black, more grayish. And to the right of our heroes, we see this huge wall, and we also see the ceiling, which shows us that the underworld is below the other world. And here we get a callback to Percy's mom saying we're not in Kansas anymore, because Percy says it too. And Annabeth is confused and says they left Kansas 4 days ago. And Percy wants to explain that it's a movie reference, but halfway through he remembers that Annabeth has never seen a movie. So for their first movie get-together / date, they could watch The Wizard of Oz. Then they spot Charon, the boatman leading the souls across the river Styx. And Grover is getting more and more anxious. You hear that by his ball squeaking, intensifying. And Annabeth asks if he can give the ball to her for stealth reasons, of course. Grover sees that this is the better way and gives the ball to Annabeth. Then they push through the line to the main gate of the underworld. And apparently the line is like in a shopping center or something, because there's like elevator music playing. And while they're pushing through, Grover feels really bad because he's a polite boy. And Percy, making clear that he's from the city, says Grover should come to the city with him, where apparently it's normal just to squeeze through lines. I don't know if that's an American thing or it's a New York thing or it's just a Percy thing. And somewhere at the front of the line, they bump into Karen. And he gathers that they are not dead. And Percy mutters, I mean, we're all kind of dying to some extent. Karen says that they didn't pay the toll to get across to cross into the underworld, and they just wanna like bribe him, basically wanting to give him all the drachmas. But apparently Karen isn't bribed that easily. He blows a dog whistle. Of course, dog whistle, underworld, can only mean for one thing. It's Cerberus time, baby. And our trio also notices early enough so they can at least start running. So as Cerberus emerges, Percy drops all the drachmas he had in his hand and they just bolt. And I mean, it looks good for like 2 seconds, and then, yeah, Grover gets eaten by Cerberus. Bye-bye to our favorite goat boy, I guess. Percy and Annabeth split up, and Percy kind of runs into a dead end, and to defend himself he pulls out Riptide, but before he has to do anything, Cerberus stops. And we see that Annabeth has like climbed up on his side and is scratching him on one of his necks. I'm not really sure about the anatomy of Cerberus. Because he, like any dog, is enjoying this. He's laying one of his head over the others. It looks so cute. And from one of the heads, what happens? Grover emerges fully drenched in dog drool. And Grover calls Cerberus a bad dog. And you know it's gonna take a lot for Grover to call any animal a bad animal. Especially dogs, because we all know there are no bad dogs, only bad people that mistreat dogs. But Annabeth tells them that she can't hold this forever, and Grover has to fly them up the wall with the winged shoes. First he does so with Percy, but Annabeth starts to slip and almost falls off of Cerberus. And from the top of the wall, Percy screams her name down to her, hoping that she's okay. We don't get like a verbal confirmation that she's okay, but out of nowhere, the red ball appears. Annabeth has thrown it up. Percy catches it and squeezes it one time. And Cerberus jumps to get the ball. He thankfully doesn't jump high enough to take off Percy's hand. But apparently while Cerberus was jumping this high, Annabeth jumped off Cerberus and is now clinging to the side of the wall. The boys help her up, and then she throws the ball down to him. It lands in the river Styx, and Cerberus is just chasing it, which is like truly shows us that Cerberus is just a puppy, or just any dog basically. And Grover asks Annabeth how she did that, and we get some lore that Annabeth's father had a dog once and that she remembers some of the tricks. And when they turn around, they see the underworld for the first time in all its glory. We see Hades' palace, which is like upside down, dangling from the ceiling, like a stalactite? Stalagmite? I always get those confused, you know, in caves, the stones that grow from the top. And now the rest of the quest is clear. They have to get the Master Bolt from Hades' palace and also Sally, of course. But in that moment, Grover realizes that he lost his pearl. And where did he lose it? In the dog. Yeah, that's not good. But they can't stop thinking about it. They need to hurry to stop a war. But before that, we go back in time to Sally sitting in the office of the school administrator, who refuses to let Percy enroll into the school. He talks about Percy's previous school reaching out to him and about Percy's behavior. He mentions a drawing that his previous school counselor reached out personally about to express his concern about Percy. It's basically what happened in the first episode when Percy was on the roof and he saw the Pegasus. And the school administrator says to Sally that they're not equipped to offer this kind of monitoring Percy might need. But Sally reiterates that he can't go anywhere else because she already withdrew him from the other school. And the administrator suggests homeschooling. Yeah, sure, go ahead and suggest homeschooling to a single mom. That would work somehow. But we see that Percy hears the school administrator suggesting homeschool and is kind of hopeful that he gets to spend more time with his mom, because we know Percy's a mama's boy. I mean, anyone would be if our mom was Sally Jackson. But Sally says no to the idea of homeschooling, which is, of course, she would say no. First of all, homeschooling is really taxing, and it's who would make money in this household, because if she's already together with Gabe, he certainly is not making any money. But before we hear their final decision, we go back to the underworld. And our trio is walking through a dark forest, but there's this one topic that they can't ignore. It's simple math. There are 4 people and 3 pearls. Someone needs to stay behind. And Grover volunteers since he's the person who lost the other pearl. But Percy is not having it. He gives Grover one of his because he has 2, and says Grover and Annabeth need to leave with Sally. But what about Percy? Grover's what about you? What about you? We heard that in the teaser from last week. Percy doesn't want to answer it and just keeps on going, and almost runs into this creepy figure. They look so creepy. And Percy, or polite boy Percy, apologizes for almost bumping into them. But Annabeth says that they can't hear them. And we realize that there are many of these same figures surrounding them. Annabeth tells us that we're in Asphodel, and says the souls here are bound by regret, haunted by choices they made in life or never made. As she's saying that, she lifts the cloak or dress, whatever they're wearing, and reveals that there are no feet, they're just roots that are holding them down. And then we hear Cerberus in the background, because Cerberus, after all, is a guard dog and is chasing them. And they start to run, but we only see the boys run. And then they realize that Annabeth is not there, that she actually can't follow them because a root grabbed onto her, so she can't move. And they also cannot rip it away. She says she will distract Cerberus and holds her pearl up to them and says that she trusts Percy's dad. Mind you, she doesn't say she trusts Poseidon. She trusts Percy's dad because she trusts Percy. And she encourages them, saying that they can do this and they should run, and she will distract Cerberus. The boys make it out of the woods, and when they turn back, they see this white light where Annabeth disappears in, and which means she's safe. Yay! And which also means it's just Percy and Grover in the underworld now. They continue on walking and land in the desert. And it's like the one Percy saw in his dreams. And at some point, they realize that Cerberus has stopped following them. And if you look closely, you see that Grover's always a few steps in front of Percy. At first, it's absent-minded, he's just walking faster. But then he starts to basically run away from Percy, but it's not conscious. The shoes Grover is wearing are starting to drag him, and Grover can't stop it. Percy runs after him over a ridge where a massive hole opens up. Grover is now sliding down towards the edge of this pit, and Percy is running after him and uses Riptide as an anchor, so he stabs it into the ground and holds on to Grover as tight as he can. And thankfully, the shoes Grover is wearing are made for human feet and not goat hooves. So after some while of dragging and pulling, they slip off. Thanks, goat feet. Goat feet save the day once again. And we see that the shoes themselves just continue flying down into that pit. The boys fall back out of exhaustion, and when they do that, they hear a metal clank in Percy's back. They're rightfully very confused and check what that was. And they're very confused. They're talking over each other because Percy pulls out the master bolt from his backpack. What? How? Huh? After their initial confusion, they remember, this isn't Percy's bag. It's the bag that Ares gave them. So that means that Ares was the one who stole it and gave it to them so they could be his mule to bring it to Hades. And now that they have the bolt, they could just go back and return it to Zeus and finish the quest that way. But both of them know that this is not an option and continue on to Hades' palace to save Sally. Yes, they have their priorities straight. Sally above the rest of the world. Speaking of Sally, we're going back in time, and she and Percy are sitting in a restaurant. He's having a coffee or a tea, and she bought him an apology ice cream sundae, which looks really good. But Percy's not touching it because he's not accepting the apology. I was like, Percy, can I have that if you don't mind? I'm just gonna take it, thank you. And Sally tries to reassure Percy that this school is gonna be good for him, but if he really doesn't like it there, that they can look for other schools. And she also says that she has to bring him back to school soon, and she doesn't want these last few minutes with each other to be like this. And baby Percy is just breaking my heart with the next few sentences. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you trying so hard to get rid of me? I would never do this to you. The last sentence with I would never do this to you is like, well, you don't really have the option to do that because you're a child and that's your mom. But when I thought about it, he theoretically, when Sally would be old and he would be grown up, he could make the decision to send her to a nursing home. I mean, yeah, it's no school, still. And Sally just stands up, kisses Percy on the top of his head and says she needs to go to pay, and goes to pay. And while she's going towards the door, she tries her best not to start sobbing. This is heartbreaking. I mean, all these flashbacks in this episode were so heartbreaking. Especially the next one. But before we get there, we're gonna go back to the underworld. There, the boys arrive at Hades' palace, which is made from unpolished black marble. It looks so cool, and the guards at the gate are huge. They're much larger than the boys. They don't do much, they just turn inwards and let them through. And this massive stone gate opens up, and they just, walk in. When they're in the middle of the room they're in, they're standing on this kind of platform that lifts them up to the next higher level, which is the throne room. We see 2 thrones, although one is slightly smaller, so for Hades and Persephone. And we hear footsteps quickly approaching. I was like, is he running? Why is he running? And then we see him. So compared to his palace, he seems small, because we know gods are of course bigger than humans if they appear in their godly form, and if they just shrink down to accommodate humans, the proportions of his home and himself look weird. And because he's so small, he's not used to his voice not carrying that wide, but he starts speaking when he's still too far away, so it's really quiet at first. And for me, it seems like he wants to come off as the cool uncle. And the first thing he does is he offers them food and drink. Grover is starting to accept it, but Percy cuts him off, demanding his mother. Straight to business. That's what Hades as a businessman is all about. And he says, I admire the cut of your jib, and says it's a nautical reference. I've heard that before, but I had no idea what it meant, so I did a bit of Googling. And here's what I found. The term originated in the sailing navies of the mid-18th century, when the nationalities of warships sighted at sea could be accurately determined by the shape of their jib, long before the national flag could be seen. And the jib is the sail at the front of the boat. I also had to Google that because I was like, what does cut of your jib mean? Yeah, now I know what it means, but I still don't know what the jib is. But now we know. Cue the more you know meme. But back to Hades, he leads the boys into another area, which is basically his living room, I guess. We have this huge carpet and this trio of sofas, one big one and 2 small ones, a table, a lamp, and a decorative golden statue of a life-size Sally Jackson. Classic. Fits perfect with the interior design, And apparently getting turned into golden statues is a family thing, since Percy did that not too many episodes ago. Percy is shocked
wanting to know what Hades did to his mom, and he was like, I saved her life, you're welcome. So Percy could come down here to see him. He says, you give me what you got and I give you what I got. And grammatically, I don't think that sentence makes sense, but I like it. But Percy refuses to give Hades the bolt, of course, because that's good. He tells him that his plan almost worked. Him and Ares managed to steal the bolt, trick Percy into bringing it to the underworld to give Hades. But Percy starts to appeal to Hades to do the right thing and release his mom and not take the bolt. Hades just retorts with a simple, huh? Hades is kind of confused by Percy's whole story, and Hades being confused confuses us and Percy and Grover as well. Hades said that he is not in cahoots with Ares. He rarely cahoots. And he does not want any part in Zeus's drama surrounding the Master Bolt. He just wants his Helm of Darkness back from Percy. And now it's the boys' turn to be confused. And now the boys are even more confused. Apparently, it went missing just days before someone used it to steal the Master Bolt. And Hades wants it back now, but we know Percy doesn't have it. Hades asks them why he would want a war between his brothers. He is not the jealous one of them. According to him, the underworld is all candy canes and rainbows. I mean, I've not seen either of those, but he's the king down there, so he knows best. And yeah, Hades just keeps talking about his brothers and that he doesn't go up there anymore because of all the family drama. And during his little speech, we're slowly zooming in on Percy's face as he has a realization in real time. He just says one word and everything went dead silent. Kronos. The name alone hit a nerve with Hades. Percy reasons with, he's got the longest grudge of them all. Zeus took Kronos' throne. Who else has a bigger reason to weaken Zeus and take his throne back? But Hades says Kronos is in a million pieces at the bottom of Tartarus. But that's the pit where the boys were almost pulled into the moment the bolt appeared in the backpack. This is where Percy was hearing a voice from in his dreams, wanting his help to destroy Olympus, and it was definitely not Hades' voice. After quickly digesting this, Hades tells Percy to ask him for sanctuary, so Hades can protect Percy from Kronos, and Sally, and the goat. All it will cost him is the bolt, and he says that he didn't want the bolt, but now he needs the bolt to be prepared for war. This only ends one way. Only question is how difficult you make it. But Percy says no, and Hades just wants to grab the bag from him because he had enough. And Percy just pulls out the pearl, very threatening. Like I said, Hades is not threatened by it. He was like, yep, nice pearl. But Percy says, I accept your offer. Your first offer. We're gonna get your helm, and when I come back, you're gonna let my mom go. Good negotiation skills, Percy. Then they throw the pearl on the ground. First to Grover, he vanishes, and then Percy, but before he vanishes, he says, hold fast, Mom. We love a good callback. The more times they say this, the bigger my desire to get this tattooed gets. Maybe not hold fast, Mom, but maybe just hold fast. Or brave the storm, something like that. But speaking of Mom, we're gonna go back to Sally. Specifically, Sally sitting there at the bar wanting to pay, almost crying. There she sees this half-eaten food and some matches. She lights one of those and throws it into an ice cream cup, and it immediately starts to rain. And a man walks in the door behind Sally and stands next to her at the bar. So, if you haven't gathered, that was just a burnt offering kind of thing. And that man is none other than Poseidon himself. Sally just summoned a god with some food scraps, so you know it's serious. And what follows is probably the best conversation in this series so far. I could basically quote everything. I love it. I'm currently getting emotional thinking about it. But yeah, I did my best to like summarize it, and then I have like the end parts in. I have just the quotes of them because they're so good. Sally says that this isn't fair and that she's failing as a mother, that she wants to take Percy to camp since this seems the only viable option at the moment, and that them living together in the city is starting to attract attention from his world. She tells Poseidon that a Pegasus already followed Percy to school. And soon it could be more than just beautiful things. Soon it could be dangerous creatures. At camp, he at least would be safe, even though Sally doesn't want him at camp. Poseidon tells her that the fact that she has no one to confide in is the most unfair part of it all. Okay, now I have quotes. I need to channel my inner Sally. I want him to know who he is before your family tries to tell him who they want him to be. He is better than that. He has better things in him than that. I love it. And the he is better than that like circles back to Percy telling Annabeth that she is better than him at the mythological stuff. And Annabeth telling, like, when she talks about Percy to Hephaestus, she also says that Percy is better than that. I love things that come full circle or reference other things. And now I have, like, a few things Poseidon said. Well, actually, it's the last things he said. For context, Poseidon has a British accent. I do not have a British accent, nor can I emulate one good enough, so I will just talk as I always talk, with a bit more pizzazz, I would say. Yeah. Then I think you have your answer. He's going to go to school, and he's gonna learn things that you can't teach him there. And it's gonna be hard for the both of you. It's gonna be torture for the both of you. But he will be stronger for it on the other side. His mother raised him well. Oh, I love it. After that, Sally asks if he wants to talk to Percy. Poseidon looks at him from, like, the other side. Percy, of course, doesn't get that someone's looking at him. And after, like, a quick thinking, we hear a thunder rumbling, which of course means Zeus saying that's enough. He let Poseidon have this little conversation with Sally, but not more. Then the next part, it's like we see Percy and his friends, but we hear still Poseidon. So I'm just gonna describe quickly what happens in the scene, and then I'm gonna tell you what Poseidon says. Percy is waking up, like now Percy, grown-up Percy. He is waking up on the beach of Montauk. I'm pretty sure it's Montauk, not Santa Barbara. No, it's not Santa Barbara, Santa Monica, because you see the cabin in the back of one shot, and Grover is lying next to him, and we see someone walk up to them, and it's Annabeth. She offers Percy a hand and helps him up, and the trio look off to the side, and we get this wide shot of the whole beach, and we see that Ares is walking towards them. Then we get like a shot of Ares himself, and he looks like amused or pissed or both. It's hard to tell with Ares. And he has a really cool sword over his shoulder. And yeah, Percy pulls out Riptide and gets ready to fight. And while all this is happening, we have the voiceover of Poseidon saying, "One day, when he's ready, when he knows who he is and where he belongs, and fate has revealed to him his true path, one day, I'll be right by his side." And then the credits hit. Oh my god, what an episode. But, you know, it's not over, because we still have the next time on Percy Jackson and the Olympians. So I think all these shots are, of course, not chronologically, but I'm just gonna talk through them like how they happened. We see Talia's tree, we're back at camp, we have Chiron waiting in front of the Poseidon cabin for Percy. He's saying, "You have to be very careful, you're more than a hero now." We have the trio at the beach. We see Annabeth holding the helm, like in the background. And then there's a shot of Percy and Luke in the woods while there's a firework going on. So they're probably celebrating something. Then we see the elevator to Olympus open. Percy is wearing Annabeth's camp necklace. I'm so excited about that part. Percy is there to see Zeus and puts the Master Bolt on the front desk of the Empire State Building and says he doesn't have an appointment. I think you can get up there without an appointment with that thing. We also see Percy walking into the throne room of Olympus, where Zeus is sitting on his big throne. And the last scene is Ares with his sword ready to fight, and Percy readying his sword as well. and Ares is charging towards Percy. And before their blades connect for the first time, it cuts to black and the credits continue. And like, this was like perfectly timed. I love it. Let's see my predictions from last episode. I did pretty okay. So the only thing I got horribly wrong is I said Krusty would be played by Dan Povenmire. It would be cool, but the guy who really played him, I have something to say about him in the Easter eggs part. Just wait for that. Something I got like half wrong, half right. I said the Ares fight would happen. Well, we saw the beginning of the Ares fight, but the most part is of course the next episode. I said the flashback would be traumatic. It was kind of traumatic, not as like traumatic as I thought it would be, but yeah, there are different kinds of trauma. And I also said that a lot of shots were just Percy and Grover and thought that they were separated or Annabeth was invisible. So they were, I think it counts as separated, that Annabeth had to leave early basically. But the other things I got actually right was that they changed the way how they got into the underworld from the books. So they went through Krusty's. Got that right. They almost fall into Tartarus, also right. We almost get eaten by Cerberus, also right, because Grover was not digested. We get some more background on the Asphodelians, which is also correct. We did that with the roots and stuff. We have a confrontation with Hades. We discover if Hades has the bolt or not, and he doesn't. We tried to free Sally, but they lost one pearl somewhere in the underworld. Specifically, they lost it inside a dog. So, yeah, but it's still in the underworld. We also get Percy wanting to stay back, but it ends up being Sally who does, even though she didn't really have a say in who stays back and who doesn't, but still. I'm right with that one. And yeah, we get the flashback with the yellow sweater Percy. Now for next episode, which is the last episode of the season. But it's not gonna be the last forever. I'm manifesting. We all need to manifest together, and I personally think it's looking good for next season. In general, thing still stands. We meet Athena. I still want to meet Athena, but it's getting denser and denser every time. So yeah, we'll see if we see her next week. But specifically for our season finale, I have the whole fight with Ares. And Annabeth gives Percy her necklace for good luck, which is, I love this detail, it's so sweet. And that Poseidon somehow helps Percy to some extent with the fight, because on the last few scenes in the episode, Poseidon said he would be there, so either he's physically there or he's like sending waves and stuff. We get Percy returning the bowl to Olympus by walking into the Empire State's lobby and having this fun conversation with how is the person at the front desk called? Front desk manager? Is that just in hotels? The guy at the front desk, to let him up to Olympus. I'm interested if he's gonna read a certain wizard book. Or is he reading Twilight? I don't remember. I think in the book he's reading either Harry Potter or Twilight. It is at least suggested that he does. We have an elevator ride to Olympus. I hope we get like some fun bits with some fun elevator music. Either it's the same as the one Hermes had, or I don't remember what song they said it was in the book, if they even said one. I know that one other elevator has the Pina Colada song, but I don't think that's this one. Then we have Percy for the first time entering Olympus and going to the throne room where he meets Zeus, and we get Zeus to call off the war, Yehu. And I also think that Poseidon and Percy meet for the first time on Olympus, or like I said, on the beach when he's helping fight Ares. We also get Sally returned to her life, and Medusa's head gets also sent to Percy's home, a la Return to Sender. Return to Sender. Oh, if they play that, I would love it. But then Percy goes back to camp. We have a party, either for the quest succeeding specifically, or the 4th of July, or the beat ceremony, one of those things. They're gonna have a celebration, definitely, because we saw fireworks. And then, well, the next episode is called The Prophecy Comes True, so the prophecy will come true. If you know what that means, you know what that means. I don't want to spoil it. Somewhere in there we say a permanent goodbye to Gabe. How you will interpret that is up to you. And at the end of the summer, they all leave. Grover can finally go on his quest to find Pan. Annabeth will join her father and his family again. And Percy will live with his mom. And I heard from some people online who apparently had screeners that there will be a post-credit scene. So either them leaving is the post-credit scene or it's something totally different, which I'm very excited for. Now, Easter eggs. I have a few of those. The first one, of course, being Krusty himself. The guy who played Krusty actually played Charon in the original Percy Jackson movie. So much for no crossover casting, Mr. Riordan, right? Because I remember distinctly when everyone was like, yeah, Logan Lerman should be Poseidon. Rick said specifically there will be no crossover casting, and yet we have one. And he basically serves the same purpose, even though he's not Charon in this one. He kind of guards the way to the underworld, or at least is stationed near the gates of the underworld. Not gates, entrance. Yeah. By the way, the actor's name is Julian Richings. And I was like, I know this dude. And the first thing that came into my head was not the Percy Jackson movie, thankfully. It is that he plays Death in Supernatural. I'm currently watching Supernatural. That's why it's on top of my head. I'm like, I know this guy. And it kind of works because, Death, gates to the underworld, works. Then the next one. The, new school Sally and Percy are parked in front of. There is, this sign. It's quite blurry, but I think I've figured out what it says. I think it says Manderley Academy. So this could be nothing, or this could be a callback to something. I don't remember Manderley Academy from the school, from the books, but I did a bit of research, and apparently the House of Manderley is a family from Game of Thrones. But the first thing I thought about is Manderley, which is written differently, but still, and it's the main mansion in the book Rebecca from Daphne du Maurier, and there's a musical about it, and I really love that musical, so that's why I thought about that one. Then another thing about this school is that the administrator of this school is actually the on-set acting coach Andrew McIlroy. I didn't know this until I saw, I think Azriel Delman posted it, the actor who plays young Percy. When I read the credits, I was like, McIlroy, I know that name from somewhere. And then when I found out it was the acting coach, I put two and two together, and because the cast talks about him a lot in interviews, and that's why the name sounded familiar. Then in the underworld, we have all these people in a line, and you see that they all have different outfits, probably depending on when or how they died. Some people are wearing pajamas, others wear hospital gowns, but two stand out for me. One guy in a matador outfit, so he died fighting a bull, which Percy fought a Minotaur and did not die. So nice parallel there. And the other one is a pilot in uniform. So why would a pilot die in uniform? Did he crash a plane? This really worried me. Then when we see the underworld for the first time, we see of course Hades' palace, but there's this other hill kind of thing. And I have a few hypotheses what this could be. It could be 1, the Isle of the Blast, because I didn't see anything else where this part of the underworld could be. 2, it could be Persephone's garden, because we didn't see it near Hades' palace, and we know Persephone has her garden in the underworld. And 3, it could be Hecate's palace, because in a lot of mythology, Hekate is also associated with the underworld and has of course not as big as a palace as Hades down there, but she has her residence down there. Then when the trio walks through the Asphodel woods, we hear birds. The sounds they use are probably crows, but I thought, why are there birds in the underworld? And I remembered from a Trials of Apollo book, this is not a spoiler, it's just I remembered it from there, that there are these birds called Strixes, and they are from the underworld. So maybe we're hearing Strixes in the underworld. Then, when we meet Hades, I have a few things of the Hades meeting. The first thing he does, he's offering them food and drink. And if you know anything about Greek mythology in the underworld, is that if you eat or drink anything in the underworld, you must stay there forever. That's why Persephone is there. And especially he offers them pomegranate juice, which is what Persephone ate. So she ate pomegranates when she got basically bound to the underworld. Then, another thing I noticed regarding Hades and Persephone is the thrones. We see that one of them is bigger than the other, which I have kind of a gripe with. Why? Because in every, Greek myth, we know Persephone is also the queen of the underworld. So they rule together. She's not she's also there, but they rule together. So I would have preferred it if their, thrones were at least the same size or, more next to each other than Persephone's being, more on the side. Maybe it's just that for the summer, and when she comes back in the winter, it looks, totally different. Maybe the whole, underworld looks totally different in the winter because Persephone brings life to the underworld, if that makes sense. And then the last thing I have regarding Easter eggs is in Hades' living room area, we see a huge painting behind them. And the painting is called The Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch. And it is supposed to symbolize the link between pleasure and earthly delights, hence the name, versus his depiction of hell. And it also reminds me of Hades and Persephone, earth delights, pleasure is more the Persephone side, and Hades, of course, being the hell part, or underworld part in this case. And I think it also shows, because earthly delights, it shows that Hades' roots are above ground because he's not from the underworld. More on that in my thoughts and feelings. Speaking of thoughts and feelings, I have a lot of those again. In general, some scenes were really dark. It's been through most of the season that a lot of things have been really dark. But this is not something that's specifically bad about this season or this series. It generally, currently in everything that has to do with Hollywood films, series, whatever, dark scenes are really dark because they make them so, as if you would watch them in a cinema and not on home on your laptop. That's my theory, so I have a gripe with all of Hollywood, apparently. And I also have to say, the episode as a whole, I liked it more when I watched it the second time. Probably I watched it when I was quite tired in the morning, and the second time I watched it, it took me 3 hours because I always paused and then wrote down some things, but I really liked it more the second time. And I think if I watch it in the evening after I come home, or I'm fully awake and I watch it, I will like it even more. But I still have to say, I teared up both times at the Sally and Poseidon conversation. But now to some specifics. At the beginning, we have Percy going into Krusty seemingly alone. After that interaction, we see that Annabeth actually has been there this whole time, just invisible. And what I think is, Annabeth was whispering to Percy what to say regarding myth stuff. Because we know Percy knows a lot of myths because Sally told him. But Procrustes is such a niche myth that I'm not sure Sally would have told Percy this one, or even known about it. Then the secret tunnel to the underworld makes so much more sense for why they ended up at Krusty's, because in the books it's really random. They got mugged or almost mugged and just ran into there to hide. And this with going straight to there because it's a secret entrance makes so much more sense. I'm a bit sad that the DOA record stuff got scrapped. At least one specific part that I miss is the explanation that they all drowned in a bathtub at the same time when they try to tell Karen that they're dead. I love that part of the book. But it's not a deal breaker, they still get in the same way. I also like that the Wizard of Oz reference is pulled through this episode. And I also think that Hades' palace looks a bit like an upside down Emerald City. It's been a while since I've seen the Wizard of Oz, but it would fit. Speaking of the underworld, I kind of missed Annabeth during the whole underworld thing, but I like that Percy and Grover's bromance gets to shine in this episode, because the last few episodes when they split up, it was always Percy and Annabeth, and Grover was off on his own. And yeah, I like that Percy and Grover get some bro time again, because I think it's the first time they had like a one-on-one since the school. For the flashback sequence, all of it was just so sad. And it shows how hard parenting is, especially if you're the parent of a demigod or a single parent. And it's even harder if you're both. I mean, we don't know if Gabe is in the picture at this moment yet, but even with Gabe, Sally is a single parent, because Gabe is not a parent. Oh yeah, back to Hades. See, I'm jumping back and forth just like the episode did. I like this Hades. I think he's a bit like a mix of 3 different people. He's a mix of the Hades from Lore Olympus, the webtoon, which I highly recommend to anyone who loves Greek mythology, the Disney's Hercules Hades, the guy with the blue hair, and Lucifer from the Lucifer series. I think this Hades is a mix of all those 3, and I really like it, because those are like 3 of my favorite depictions of Lucifer, devil, whatever you want to call the entity in the underworld. Speaking of Hades, I like that his jacket is like not completely black. It has like these green parts. And this jacket says, I know I'm the boss here, but I am not from here. Otherwise he would just wear all black if he was from the underworld. This green has like, I think symbolizes 2 things. One thing, that he is from the earth above originally. And the second thing is like the green, and I think the pattern of the jacket itself is like flower pattern, is representative of Persephone, especially when she's not around. He needs something to remind himself of his beloved wife. Yeah, and now Poseidon. I love Toby Stephens as Poseidon. I love his accent. The first time I watched it, I was like, is he British? And then I was like, no. But then I was, oh no, he is. Because I couldn't place the accent at first, but then I listened more and I was like, yep, that's definitely a British accent. And the Sally and Poseidon conversation as a whole is just so sad. It gives like co-parenting vibes. And like I said, I cried. And the fact that they just sit next to each other and don't look at each other the whole time that they're talking, I think symbolizes so much. So if they would have looked at each other, one of them would have broken. Like, I don't know how, but something would have gone wrong for Percy or the world if they had looked at each other. Yeah, but I already know that there are so many people that are just going to talk about this scene, so I will move on to my last part of thoughts and feelings. It's Annabeth. So at the end, when Percy and Grover end up at the beach, we see that Annabeth has been there and helps them up. And if we have at least 10 minutes of screen time between Annabeth disappears and the boys show up, and their journey is probably much longer than that. So has Annabeth just been waiting there for, I don't know, 4 hours or something? And was Ares there the whole time? Did Annabeth and Ares have a conversation, or did Ares just show up the same time that the boys showed up? We're gonna see next week, hopefully. But now it's time for Trivia Trials! Woo! Just as a reminder, you can answer all these questions as a DM to me on Instagram, but I'm also posting the questions and answers in my story, so it's always at the same time, on the same day that the episode drops. Maybe a few hours later, I will post a story with the questions. And there's also a highlight in my profile where all the questions and answers are gathered in one. So the first question last week was, who is the Brazilian publisher of the Percy Jackson books? And the answer is Intrínseca. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't speak Portuguese, but I think that's correct. Then the second question was about Lin-Manuel Miranda. What was his first musical called, with which he won 4 Tony Awards, including Best Musical? It was not Hamilton, it was In the Heights. And I love both of those. I just love them. Now on to today's questions. The first one is, what are the names of Hecate's polecat and dog? Because if Percy and Annabeth have to watch out for them, at least we should know what they're called. And the second question is, since we had a lot of Wizard of Oz references this episode, what year did the movie The Wizard of Oz starring Judy Garland come out? Okay, as always, we're saving the best for last. Mythical music! And to round out today's episode, which was dark and gloomy, I have the perfect song. How is it a perfect song, you might ask? Well, it was composed specifically for this episode. Yes, that is right, we are adding another soundtrack song, specifically Lord of the Dead, because we had two, if I remember correctly, two soundtrack songs in this episode. It was one Fields of Asphodel and the second was Lord of the Dead. I prefer Lord of the Dead because it's a bit more nuanced. I think the other one was quite slow and steady. But yeah, and I thought we needed a break between all those pop songs to get the mood back before we pop off next week. I'm very intrigued what music we're going to have next week because I'm pretty sure it's the last episode. We need another amazing needle drop. Let's see what's it gonna be. Oh, that rhymed. Nice. This episode was a longer one. I hope you like it because I'm talking so much. But let's close this out and go home. And that concludes another adventure with Delphi Dispatches. Thank you, demigods, for joining me on today's quest. Please consider subscribing to the podcast. And if you want to connect with me on Instagram, just follow at Delphi_Dispatches_pod for updates and a fun community. This is Martina, signing off until next time. And remember, the real world is where the monsters are.